All right, folks. Hello and welcome back to online English class. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today we are going to continue the process of working through your focus points for your quarter four essay. But before we get into that, let's quickly talk through the top of the week announcements. Okay. First and foremost, make sure that when you're finished with your work for the semester that you return your books to my room. Okay. Second, make sure that on a daily basis you are still taking care of your discussion grade procedure until the class ends, until there are no more videos to be watched. All right. And third, make sure that you are taking care of your final ongoing assignment, which is your quarter four essay, and you can turn that in on May 22nd. That is the latest that you can turn it in. Again, no problem turning it in then. In fact, I hope that you're using this week to sharpen and edit that essay, and then you turn it in on the 22nd promptly with no problems. Okay, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump back into our essay prompt and look a little more closely at another one of our focus points. Okay, so to summarize where we've been up to this point, right, in our first essay drafting conversation, we talked about the importance of the overarching essay writing and editing process. All right, and we really emphasize the importance of generating ideas about the prompt, of understanding what the prompt is asking you to do. All right, how they're asking you to structure your essay, okay, how they're asking you to format the style of your essay, and what they are prompting you to think about in your essay. Okay, all of those things, right, as you can see, the basic details, the prompt, and the style, all of these aspects are part of generating ideas about the prompt and understanding what the prompt is asking you to do. So once you have a clear understanding of what you are supposed to do, you can begin the process of actually doing it, right? The second portion of the essay writing process is developing a central claim, okay? And if you want a really sharp, effective central claim, then you need to develop that claim into a thesis statement that is properly placed, clearly stated, and defensible. All right, we looked already at a great example of a thesis statement about Chaucer's perspective of church corruption through his characterization of the pardoner. All right. Now, after you have your central claim, then you can begin the process of what? Well, supporting that central claim, of gathering evidence and organizing that evidence into a logical progression that supports your thesis. In other words, writing, as we discussed yesterday, body paragraphs that feature topic sentences, evidence, and commentary that supports the line of reasoning established in the thesis, and establishing a logical organizational pattern for your body paragraphs that support the thesis, okay? A body that supports the head of the essay. And all of that is interconnected with transitions, all right, and a clear line of reasoning that binds everything together in the essay, okay? So we already looked at examples of that in this particular essay, all right? We've got our head right here. We've got relevant background here. We expand on that relevant background in a paragraph that's been omitted, all right, in the brackets here. Obviously, the brackets were not a part of the actual student's essay. That's just me. I'm just summarizing what the student did there because I don't necessarily want you to have to read that whole paragraph or also necessarily see all of the ways that the student used the research so that you can sort of be on your own a little bit more. Then obviously, the student gets into his textual analysis of the pardoner from the general prologue, and then later the pardoner from the pardoner's tale itself. Okay, so do we have body paragraphs that feature topic sentences, evidence, commentary that are connected to the line of reasoning established in the thesis? Yes, we do. Are those body paragraphs logically organized? Yes, they are. Okay, so today what we want to talk about is the research skills that you need to display on this research essay. Now, normally when Corona is not sort of messing up the schedule and making everything a little bit abnormal, okay, this research project is a little bit bigger. You have to use more outside resources, okay? But right now, if you're in the regular class, all you got to use is one, all right? And if you're in the honors class, all you got to use is two, okay? But the same principles apply for good use of research and outside resources, okay? Just because you're only using two or only using one doesn't mean that you can't use those two or one resource really, really effectively, okay? So how do you use a resource effectively? What does it mean? All right, because a lot of times in like middle school research papers, okay, you just kind of throw out quotes from some resource, and you make sure that if you got a mean teacher that you've cited it in MLA formatting, and then you kind of move on. You're like, look, I made the quotes. Well, that's not what research is for. Research exists in order to make a project, right? In order to defend the line of reasoning of a project, in order to, in other words, support your thesis. Okay. So in order to do that, you need to go through a kind of 5-step process. First and foremost, you need to identify the kind of outside resources that are related to your research task. Okay, so if we think about what our task is, which is analyzing Chaucer's view of the leadership of the aristocracy in 14th century English culture, it is immediately relevant for us to think about this concept and to do some research about this concept, this subject. Okay, or if we're doing prompt option number 2, which again, we didn't analyze the partner's tale in class, so this would be independent work on your behalf, but you're more than welcome to do it. All right, we would need to do a little bit of research, all right, about the medieval church, because the medieval church is not the same thing as the modern church. Our understanding, the connotations of that word church are so different now than they used to be in 14th century English culture. Similar with these concepts of aristocracy. We don't have an aristocracy. We don't have a codified aristocracy. How about that in American society? And leadership is approached in different ways in modern society. So it immediately becomes necessary for you, if you're going to analyze Chaucer's view of this subject within its historical context, you're going to need to do some what? Some historical research about your subject, okay? So immediately it becomes clear that the kind of outside resources that are related to this task, okay, most fundamentally, is historical research about these subjects. Okay, so whichever subject you select, you then do research about that subject in the medieval 14th century context. Okay. Now, the second thing you want to do is identify reliable sources. Okay, so not only should your sources be related to the research task. Okay, so again, another mistake a lot of students make is they don't find sources that are genuinely related to the research task. Okay, so they'll go, oh, this is Chaucer lived in the Middle Ages, so I need to do research about the Middle Ages in general, and they cite a bunch of information about like Charlemagne and Clovis. Okay, that Charlemagne and Clovis and the Frankish Empire existed literally 1,000 years before Chaucer lived and wrote. Okay, 1,000 years is a long time, guys. All right, so you want to make sure that your research is narrowed from the Middle Ages generally to the late Middle Ages more specifically, and English culture even more specifically. Okay, so be as specific as you can be in your research. Make sure that your research is related. Okay, the second R is you want to make sure that your research is reliable. Okay. So you want to make sure that you're getting information not from the first random medieval blog that you can pull up on Google, that's some .com source that's run by some dude in his basement, okay? You want to make sure that you're engaging with published, reliable resources. That's why I've already directed you to where? To 2 scholarly resources. One, your world history textbook, which is a reliable resource, okay, written and edited by scholars of history. Okay, doesn't mean that everything they say is perfect, doesn't mean that they know everything about everything, but it means that they are more reputable than, say, Joe Smo from his basement running his medieval culture blog. Okay, and the second resource that I've already recommended to you is Sheila Fisher's Introduction to the Canterbury Tales. Sheila Fisher, does she know everything about everything? No. But is she a scholar of Chaucer's the culture and Chaucer's work? Yes, absolutely. Okay, she helped edit and translate the tales that we studied. Okay, so we can definitely take her word as reliable on this topic. Okay, so I would just highly recommend engaging with reliable published resources. Okay, then you need to directly cite. What does it mean to directly cite something? It means that it is quoted directly in your essay or paraphrased or summarized from in your essay. Okay, so as you can see, this student is using a published book called the Catholicism Answer Book. Now, is that the best resource of all time? No. But does it give us some background information about medieval Roman Catholicism? Yes. And that basic background is helpful and useful. Okay, so Trigalio and Briganti explain that, quote, in the late 12th and early 13th centuries, under the rule of Pope Innocent, the papacy attained its height of power and influence. They continue, quote, all the churches were under his control, etc., end quote. Notice that Trigalio and Briganti are attributed with an in-text citation at the end of this sentence. Then the page number from which the quote was pulled is cited, and then there's an end of the parentheses and then a period. Okay. The student continues directly citing from this resource. Now, does the student just quote one time from the resource? No. Okay. In fact, the student is using this resource in a robust way. All right. He's using a lot of information from this resource. So just because you only have to cite from two outside resources, does that mean you should only have two pieces of information from those resources? No, you ought to have tons of pieces of information from those resources that are helping support your thesis. Okay, so you can either directly quote, directly cite, or paraphrase, which is to say put it in your own words, but it's still their ideas, so what? You cite it at the end of your sentence, or summarize information from the documents. Okay, so let's say you have like a 5-page section of your history textbook that's all about late medieval culture, and you just, instead of quoting all 5 of those pages or paraphrasing all 5 of those pages, which is crazy, you just summarize in your own words, very briefly, the important salient details from that passage, that 5-page area of text. And then at the end of that summary, what do? You cite where you got that information from. Prior to your summary, you introduce the fact that you're pulling this information from somewhere else other than your brain. In other words, in world history, the writers explain that late medieval culture was experiencing a shift from to blank, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Finally, you need to, fourth, you need to make sure that you're synthesizing sources into your analysis and argument. Okay, what does that word synthesis mean? It means bringing things together. So not only are you citing sources that are related and reliable, and you're using them in the actual text of your essay, but you're integrating them into the body of your essay in such a way that it is very clear how the information that you are citing from your outside resource, your resources, how that information helps develop your line of reasoning in the essay. Okay, so in other words, I don't want a bunch of unrelated background information that isn't going to help me directly understand Chaucer's perspective of the subject that you're writing your essay about. Okay, in other words, here this student's essay is a great example of good synthesis. Right? Ready? The student is writing about Chaucer's satirization of the medieval Roman Catholic Church, right? So what does he do? Well, he describes some of the influence, the wide-ranging influence of the medieval Catholic Church using historical research. What does he do in the next paragraph? He talks about increasing corruption in that Catholic Church during the late Middle Ages. That Chaucer may have been exposed to and may have had a negative opinion of. And then what does he do, right? With that historical context in mind, right, we begin to look at the partner's characterization and we see, guess what? correlations between the examples of church corruption that the student gave here and the examples of church corruption that he analyzes in the portrayal of the pardoner, right? So in other words, his research is not unrelated to his analysis. In fact, it is integrally related to his analysis, as he shows how the pardoner's characterization parallels some historical realities from Chaucer's day and age. Okay? So finally, when you get done working with your sources, you want to sit back and you want to evaluate how effective your source was in supporting your claim. Okay, so here, the student's central claim is all about Chaucer's perspective of the church. Does his use of these background historical resources authentically help illustrate his thesis? When we sit back and we evaluate that, right, the answer is yeah, they do help support his thesis because they offer some significant, relevant historical context that we then set next to his analysis of the characters, and we see patterns that reflect historical realities, and we go, man, this is probably a valid reading of what Chaucer is intending to say about the pardoner, and B, gives us a pretty clear perspective of what Chaucer's attitude was toward this institution, the Roman Catholic Church. All right. In other words, the thesis has been supported. All right. So finally, right, we want to think about how these resources are cited. Now, this works cited page is lengthier than yours will be because ultimately, how many citations should you have in order to fulfill the basic requirements of the prompt? Well, if you're in honors, you will need 2 outside resources and then 1 for Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. So 3 total, 3 total, 3 total. All right, if you are in regular, you'll need your 1 reputable outside resource and then Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. So 2 total. This student has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total. Now, like I said, the assignment is much more lengthy when we're not in sort of Corona mode. But basically, all right, the heart of the assignment stays true. The skills, the critical reading and writing skills required are the same. It's a little less. It's a little less labor intensive, but it's the same skill. Can you select sources and then cite information that is relevant to supporting your thesis statement and situate those outside resources into a larger line of reasoning that supports your thesis statement? If so, then you have effectively accomplished the focus point G. You have deployed effective research skills. Okay? So remember, identify, seek out, directly cite, paraphrase, and summarize, synthesize, and then finally, when you're done, sit back and evaluate. Does this actually help support my claim, or am I just throwing out quotes from random sources in order to fulfill the basic requirements of the prompt? Well, if you do that, your attempt to help your grade will ultimately end up harming your grade because you will get a pretty poor score on the quality of your research skills. So make sure you guys definitely have the time to do this. Make sure that your research is authentically supporting your thesis statement. Okay. All right, folks, that is all that we have for today. Make sure that you are applying these concepts in your own writing and that you are developing your thesis statement by using outside resources to help offer a historical context to your analysis of Chaucer's perspective of whatever subject you select, whether it be the leadership of the aristocracy, the church, or Chaucer's conception of gender roles, men and women in medieval society. Have a great day.